In the year 1935, a bold vision emerged from American Airlines to offer transcontinental air travel where passengers could genuinely rest in proper beds, not merely endure cramped seating or stuffy cabins. The aspiration was to recreate the comfort of a Pullman train car, but at a dizzying altitude of 10,000 feet, transforming the journey from New York to Los Angeles. To bring this ambitious concept to fruition, they approached Donald Douglas, the renowned California aircraft manufacturer, known for his pioneering work with all-metal designs. American Airlines placed an order for 20 such sleeper planes, a request Douglas accepted, though his engineering team faced the formidable challenge of crafting a commercial airliner that could be both sumptuously luxurious and economically viable, a task akin to navigating a delicate thread through the eye of a needle amidst a raging tempest. The dedicated team at Douglas Aircraft Company swiftly embarked on this monumental project. Their tireless efforts culminated in a historic moment on December 17, 1935, precisely 32 years to the day after the Wright brothers' inaugural flight. On this significant occasion, the DST, or Douglas Sleeper Transport, gracefully ascended from Cloverfield in Santa Monica. This aircraft was a marvel of contemporary engineering, boasting an all-metal fuselage, powered by twin engines, featuring a robust tailwheel, and offering the versatility of accommodating either 14 comfortable sleeping berths or 21 standard day seats in its DC-3 variant. The airline industry instantly embraced it, recognizing its groundbreaking potential as the first aircraft capable of generating substantial profits solely from passenger fares, thereby eliminating the previous dependency on mail contracts. Consequently, the DC-3 rapidly became the foundational pillar of American civil aviation, its influence spreading across the nation almost instantaneously. But here is the unexpected truth, a quality unforeseen at its inception. This passenger aircraft, meticulously engineered for passenger comfort and financial gain, possessed an inherent structural resilience designed for arduous conditions. Its fuselage adopted a semi-monocoque construction, an ingenious design where the metal skin itself bore significant stress loads, rather than relying exclusively on an internal framework. This innovation rendered the aircraft remarkably lightweight yet extraordinarily robust, much like an aluminum beverage can that steadfastly resists crumpling under pressure. Furthermore, its wings were notably thick, incorporating a high-lift airfoil design that afforded the plane the crucial ability to execute takeoffs and landings on relatively short runways. This characteristic was indispensable given the rudimentary grass strips and unpaved fields that frequently served as airports during the 1930s. Douglas engineers also ingeniously incorporated a broad center section between the wing spars, which created a generously proportioned cargo hold. This capacious area was designed to effortlessly accommodate luggage, mail sacks, and, as future events would dramatically reveal, could also swallow jeeps, howitzers, and even wounded soldiers on stretchers. The landing gear was engineered for exceptional ruggedness, built to absorb the jarring impacts typical of hard landings on uneven, unpaved strips. Additionally, the tailwheel configuration provided superior ground stability, even when contending with challenging crosswinds. By 1939, the DC-3 had achieved an unparalleled dominance, handling an astonishing 90% of the world's airline traffic. Over 400 of these magnificent aircraft were actively in service, forging vital connections between cities across America, Europe, and Asia. Pan American Airways utilized them to pioneer new routes throughout Latin America, while KLM operated them on flights extending to the distant Dutch East Indies. It was, without question, the first truly global airliner, democratizing air travel and making it accessible not merely to the affluent elite, but to the burgeoning middle class as well. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Then, the world plunged into conflict. Germany's invasion of Poland in September 1939 abruptly illuminated a critical realization. Modern warfare was not won solely by the might of fighter planes and bombers. The rapid deployment of troops, essential supplies, and vital equipment necessitated robust transport aircraft. The U.S. Army Air Corps, having closely observed the DC-3 for several years, found its capabilities profoundly intriguing. This civilian aircraft, designed for peaceful commerce, demonstrated an impressive capacity to haul 3 tons of cargo, maintain a respectable cruising speed of 160 miles per hour, and, crucially, operate effectively from rough, unprepared fields. While not originally conceived for military applications, it possessed all the intrinsic qualities a military transport demanded: unwavering reliability, operational simplicity, and inherent toughness. Consequently, high-ranking military officials began initiating urgent communications with Douglas's headquarters in Santa Monica. December 1941 irrevocably altered the global landscape. The devastating Japanese assault on Pearl Harbor on the 7th thrust the United States into a two-ocean war, confronting a severe deficit in essential military equipment. The Army Air Forces immediately required transport planes, not in a distant 6 months, nor after a protracted development program, but instantaneously. Recognizing the proven efficacy of the DC-3, a straightforward yet pivotal decision was made: to militarize it. On paper, this conversion appeared uncomplicated. In stark reality, Douglas engineers were granted a mere 72 hours to transform a luxurious civilian airliner into a robust cargo hauler capable of withstanding the rigors of combat. The opulent sleeper berths were summarily removed. Gone were the sophisticated soundproofing panels, the plush passenger seats, and the convenient overhead bins designed for personal luggage. In their place, Douglas engineers installed reinforced aluminum floors, specifically rated to endure highly concentrated loads, such as ammunition crates, heavy fuel drums, or even a fully assembled motorcycle. A massive cargo door, 6 feet in height, and wide enough to accommodate a disassembled Jeep or a 75mm pack howitzer broken into components, was added to the port side. This was far from a gentle modification. It involved significant structural incisions into the fuselage, with the edges meticulously reinforced by heavy frames to prevent any cracking under the intense stresses of military operations. The military also stipulated the inclusion of seating for paratroopers. 28 men, fully equipped for combat, would sit facing each other along the cabin walls on fold-down benches constructed from tubular aluminum and canvas webbing. These seats were not designed for comfort. Their purpose was purely functional. They needed to be lightweight, exceptionally strong, and rapidly deployable. Above these seats, Douglas engineers incorporated a robust steel anchor line, spanning the entire length of the cabin ceiling. Paratroopers would attach their static lines to this cable, ensuring that upon jumping, the line would automatically deploy their parachutes. This was a brilliantly simple yet precisely engineered solution. The cable had to be capable of withstanding the simultaneous tug of 28 men during a drop without tearing loose from the airframe. Furthermore, the floor was outfitted with tie-down rings at regular intervals, heavy steel loops securely bolted through the skin into the underlying structure, allowing cargo to be firmly lashed down with chains or ropes, preventing any shifting during turbulence or aggressive maneuvers. Pilots also received targeted upgrades: more resilient instruments, a superior compass, and astrodome hatches facilitating celestial navigation during extensive overwater flights. Additionally, a 24-volt electrical system was implemented, replacing the civilian 12-volt setup, to power advanced radios and signal lights essential for communication with ground troops. This comprehensively redesigned aircraft received a new designation, the C-47 Skytrain. The C denoted its cargo role, and 47 simply marked its place in the Air Force's sequential numbering system. Crucially, Douglas made no alterations to the engines, wings, or landing gear. There was no time for such modifications, and frankly, no necessity, as the civilian DC-3's structure was already overbuilt by airline standards, rendering it perfectly suited for the rigorous demands of military service. By January 1942, the initial C-47s began to roll off the production line at the Long Beach plant. To meet the escalating demand, Douglas also activated a second manufacturing facility in Oklahoma City. The Army's initial order for 965 planes quickly escalated to 5,000 and continued to grow. Workers toiled tirelessly in round-the-clock shifts, transforming the factory floor into a spectacle of controlled chaos, wings being meticulously riveted, powerful engines being lowered onto their mounts, and fuselages steadily progressing down the assembly line, resembling a purposeful procession of aluminum insects. Each aircraft required approximately 20,000 man-hours to complete, a figure that, while substantial, pales in comparison to the triple amount required for Boeing's B-17 bomber. The C-47 distinguished itself as an aircraft that was swift to construct, economical to operate, and almost indestructible in its resilience. The very essence of the C-47 lay in its pair of Pratt & Whitney R-1830 twin Wasp engines, and comprehending their specific significance is paramount to understanding the aircraft's unparalleled dominance. Each engine featured a 14-cylinder air-cooled radial configuration, where the cylinders were arranged in a circular pattern around the crankshaft, much like the petals of a blossoming flower. This design offered considerable advantages. Air-cooled engines eliminated the need for radiators, coolant lines, or pumps, thereby reducing the number of potential failure points and decreasing overall weight. In active combat zones, where a single bullet piercing a coolant line could incapacitate a liquid-cooled engine, the Twin Wasp demonstrated remarkable operational resilience. Each engine generated 1,200 horsepower at takeoff, a figure that, while not extraordinary compared to dedicated fighter planes, proved to be precisely the optimal power output for a transport aircraft. Excessive power would lead to fuel inefficiency, while insufficient power would hinder its ability to lift a full load from a short jumble strip. The Twin Wasp perfectly struck this delicate balance. However, it was in the detailed engineering that Douglas's team truly distinguished themselves. They did not merely bolt these engines onto the wings. They meticulously designed engine mounts that effectively absorb vibration, a critical consideration given that radial engines inherently generate significant tremors. These mounts incorporated rubber isolators, allowing the engine to subtly oscillate without transmitting every shudder directly into the airframe. This design prevented rivets from loosening and averted the development of metal fatigue cracks that would otherwise ground the aircraft after only a few hundred hours of operation. They also integrated full feathering propellers, a sophisticated feature adapted from bomber aircraft. In the event of an engine failure, the pilot could rotate the blades of the defunct propeller to an edge-on position relative to the wind, thereby eliminating drag. This capability meant that the C-47 could continue to fly on a single engine, not with optimal performance or speed, but it could reliably limp home instead of plummeting from the sky. Pilots greatly appreciated this feature, as engine failures were a common occurrence over hostile territory, and single-engine flying saved hundreds of crews. The fuel system itself represented another triumph of practical engineering. The C-47 carried 804 gallons of aviation gasoline, distributed among 4 tanks, 2 situated within the wings and 2 within the center section of the aircraft. Fuel was gravity-fed from the wing tanks to the engines, ensuring that even if the electric fuel pumps failed, the engines would continue to operate as long as fuel remained in the tanks. For missions requiring extended range, ground crews could install auxiliary fuel tanks inside the cargo cabin, thereby extending the aircraft's operational range from 1,600 miles to over 3,000 miles. This transformation enabled the C-47 to function as a transoceanic transport, capable of island hopping across the vast Pacific or undertaking the challenging South Atlantic route from Brazil to West Africa. The aircraft consumed approximately 100 gallons of fuel per hour at cruising speed, which might appear substantial until one considers its capacity to haul 3 tons of cargo simultaneously. The fuel efficiency per ton-mile was superior to almost any truck convoy and offered an immeasurably faster mode of transport. The aircraft's design elements contributed to its exceptional performance, allowing for operations that were both swifter and more efficient. A crucial, yet often overlooked, component of its robust construction was the meticulously reinforced cargo floor. Douglas engineers significantly upgraded the foundational DC-3 floor, integrating formidable longitudinal support beams that stretched from the forward section to the aft, complemented by transverse cross members strategically placed at regular intervals. This enhancement endowed the floor with an impressive capacity to bear a concentrated load of 6,000 pounds, preventing structural compromise even when heavy items, such as numerous ammunition crates, were stacked densely in a confined space. Furthermore, the floor's subtle convex curvature, elevated at its center and sloping gently towards the periphery, ingeniously facilitated the drainage of accumulated water and mud directly out of the aircraft, thereby averting internal pooling and potential maintenance issues. Such seemingly minor yet ingenious design choices were instrumental in distinguishing a truly operational aircraft from one prone to chronic mechanical problems. The surface of this innovative floor was protected by easily replaceable non-slip plywood panels, allowing ground personnel to effect repairs or replacements in under an hour should damage occur. The beauty of this system lay in its utter simplicity and lack of ostentation, representing intelligent engineering flawlessly executed. Considering the cumulative effect of its various integrated systems, from its powerful engines and reliable fuel network to its resilient floor and robust structural integrity, the aircraft emerged as a remarkably user-friendly machine, practically impervious to operational error. In the unforgiving crucible of wartime, this inherent resilience and ease of operation proved to be an asset far more valuable than sheer speed or unbridled power. The global community collectively anticipated the pivotal events of June 6, 1944, as Operation Overlord commenced its monumental sweep across the Normandy coastline. However, preceding the critical moment when the initial landing craft made contact with the shores, the true genesis of this grand offensive unfolded silently in the pre-dawn heavens above France. Precisely at 12:15 a.m., an awe-inspiring fleet of 822 C-47 transport planes ascended from various airfields strategically dispersed throughout southern England. Their voluminous fuselages. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. We're densely populated with American paratroopers, drawn from the distinguished 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions. Each individual aircraft transported a complement of 18 to 20 fully equipped soldiers, burdened by approximately 80 pounds of essential gear, including weaponry, ammunition, and auxiliary parachutes. The interior of the cabin was characterized by its constricted dimensions, profound darkness, and a pervasive olfactory blend of perspiration, lubricating oil, and the unfortunate scent of emesis, a consequence of many soldiers experiencing airsickness amidst the turbulent flight conditions. The aviators meticulously maintained stringent flight patterns, organized into serials, intricate V-formations comprising 9 aircraft, arrayed in succession. Their navigation relied primarily on dead reckoning, supplemented by intermittent radio beacons, as the pervasive threat of German radar rendered electronic navigation attempts exceedingly perilous. They traversed the expanse of the English Channel at an altitude of 1,500 feet, sufficiently low for the distinctive thrum of their engines to resonate distinctly across the water's surface. The operational blueprint, while appearing flawlessly conceived on paper, envisioned the deployment of 13,000 paratroopers deep inland, situated strategically behind Utah Beach. Their critical objectives included the rapid securing of vital bridges, the neutralization of enemy artillery emplacements, and the effective interdiction of German reinforcements. The elite Pathfinders initiated the jump at precisely 12:15 a.m., tasked with establishing crucial radar beacons and illumination systems to delineate the designated drop zones. Subsequent to their deployment, the principal waves of aircraft were slated to follow, each serial meticulously timed for arrival at predetermined intervals. However, the inherent unpredictability of conflict invariably dictates that even the most elaborate plans seldom unfold precisely as conceived. Upon the C-47 fleet's approach to the French coastline, a barrage of German anti-aircraft fire erupted. Luminous tracer rounds carved incandescent arcs through the oppressive gloom, while 80mm flak shells detonated with explosive force, blossoming into fiery orange orbs. Instantly, the pilots initiated frantic evasive maneuvers, executing sharp dives, rapid ascents, and sudden twists in a desperate bid to elude the lethal ordnance. The formerly disciplined formations dissolved into disarray. A segment of the pilots deliberately reduced their airspeed to 90 miles per hour, harboring concerns that excessive velocity could endanger the paratroopers during their exit due to propeller wash. Conversely, other pilots aggressively advanced their throttles, accelerating to 150 miles per hour in an urgent attempt to outrun the intense anti-aircraft barrage. The cumulative effect was utter pandemonium. Paratroopers were compelled to leap into the inky blackness, utterly disoriented regarding their precise location. Tragically, some descended into waterlogged fields, succumbing to drowning under the considerable mass of their combat gear. Others found themselves ensnared in tree canopies, entangled on building rooftops, or, most perilously, deposited directly within active German defensive positions. Nonetheless, despite the relentless onslaught, a remarkable characteristic emerged. The C-47s persistently remained airborne. Numerous aircraft sustained direct impacts, their aluminum skins violently perforated by shrapnel. Instances of ruptured hydraulic lines and engines igniting were not uncommon. Yet, a substantial majority of these battle-scarred transports managed to painstakingly return to their English bases. Returning crews recounted astonishing tales of wings riddled with bullet holes, tail sections almost completely severed, and critical control cables tenuously clinging by mere strands. One particular C-47, an emblem of the aircraft's incredible resilience, managed to land with an astounding 108 perforations in its fuselage and both its engines operating at the very brink of failure. This severely damaged aircraft was promptly repaired overnight, a testament to the dedication of ground crews and the simplicity of its design, and was astonishingly airborne once more by the following day. Ironically, the widespread dispersion of the paratroopers, initially a consequence of the chaotic drop, inadvertently worked to the advantage of the Allied forces. German command centers were inundated with intelligence reports indicating paratroopers landing indiscriminately, concealed behind virtually every hedgerow and within every village, fostering an escalating sense of alarm. This led to a miscalculation, as they erroneously concluded that the scale of the invasion was far grander than its actual magnitude. In the enveloping darkness, small contingents of American soldiers gradually converged, employing distinctive toy crickets as a clandestine means of identification, and subsequently commenced their assaults on designated targets. By the break of dawn, notwithstanding the extensive scattering of the drops, the paratroopers had successfully secured pivotal bridges and crucial roadways, establishing vital footholds. As daylight broke on June 6, the C-47s reappeared over the Normandy landscape, this time undertaking a different yet equally vital role, towing Waco gliders. These unpowered aircraft were laden with essential equipment such as jeeps, anti-tank weaponry, and additional contingents of troops. The gliders themselves were rudimentary constructs, essentially flimsy boxes fashioned from plywood, and attempting to land them in the confined, irregular French fields often proved to be a perilous undertaking, frequently resulting in fatalities for their occupants. Nevertheless, the resilient C-47 tug aircraft unfailingly delivered them to their intended destinations. On D-Day alone, more than 500 gliders successfully touched down, providing crucial artillery pieces and vehicles that the initial wave of paratroopers were incapable of transporting. Throughout that arduous day, the C-47 crews executed a relentless series of missions, encompassing troop deployments, glider towing operations, and the critical evacuation of casualties on their return journeys. The pilots, under immense strain, were utterly exhausted, while navigators, their voices raw, had become hoarse from ceaselessly relaying coordinates. Every aircraft interior was permeated by the pungent odors of cordite and blood, grim reminders of the ongoing conflict. Despite the overwhelming challenges, the overarching mission achieved its objectives. The initial drop zones in Normandy were successfully transformed into secure footholds, and these vital positions subsequently facilitated the crucial breakout that ultimately led to the liberation of France. General Dwight D. Eisenhower himself would later unequivocally state that victory in the war would have been unattainable without the C-47, not the formidable fighter planes, nor the devastating bombers, but rather this unassuming, unarmed transport aircraft, diligently performing the indispensable, often overlooked tasks. The C-47's tireless service did not conclude with the successful operations in Normandy. Merely 10 months subsequent to those pivotal events, on March 24, 1945, the aircraft once again assumed a central role in a major military undertaking, Operation Varsity. This ambitious airborne assault aimed to breach the formidable Rhine River defenses and penetrate deep into Germany's vital industrial heartland. For this subsequent operation, military strategists had assiduously assimilated the critical lessons derived from the challenges encountered during D-Day. Consequently, there were no night drops and no haphazardly dispersed formations. Instead, a colossal fleet comprising over 900 C-47s and their British counterparts ascended into the sky in broad daylight at precisely 10 a.m., maintaining formations with an almost ceremonial exactitude. Within a remarkable span of less than 2 hours, they successfully deployed 17,000 British and American paratroopers, an unparalleled concentration, making it the most focused airborne assault ever recorded in history. The German anti-aircraft fire proved devastatingly effective, as the clear daylight conditions afforded enemy gunners unobstructed views of their targets. Tragically, 53 C-47s were shot down directly over the drop zones, plummeting in fiery spirals into the German landscape. An additional 400 aircraft managed to return to base, but were so severely damaged that they were either declared irreparable or necessitated weeks of extensive restoration. Despite these heavy losses, the mission achieved its strategic objectives. The paratroopers landed cohesively, well-organized, and prepared for immediate engagement, successfully seizing the crucial bridgeheads that enabled ground forces to rapidly advance across the Rhine River. The C-47 unequivocally demonstrated an extraordinary capacity to withstand and absorb punishment that would have utterly destroyed aircraft of inferior design, yet still successfully fulfill its primary objective of payload delivery. Concurrently, a staggering 6,000 miles distant, across the vast expanse of the Pacific Theater, C-47s were engaged in an entirely disparate form of warfare. Improvised jungle airstrips, carved from the dense tropical environments of New Guinea, the Philippines, and Burma, transformed into vital conduits for military personnel isolated from conventional naval supply chains. These were not conventional, fully developed airfields. Rather, they were rudimentary clearings hewn from the heart of rainforests, surfaced with either pierced steel planking or crushed coral, often barely exceeding 2,000 feet in length and frequently bordered by towering trees at both extremities. The C-47, however, proved remarkably indifferent to these challenging conditions. Its broad stance landing gear effectively distributed its weight across unstable or soft terrain, while its tailrigger configuration meant the tailwheel inherently functioned as an effective braking mechanism during the landing rollout, further enhancing its adaptability. Pilots frequently executed landings with one engine deliberately feathered, a testament to their skill and the aircraft's resilience, often while simultaneously evading Japanese fighter aircraft during their approach. Upon touchdown, they would swiftly offload cargo, embark wounded personnel, and rapidly initiate another takeoff before enemy artillery could precisely target their position. In the arduous Burmese theater, C-47s provided crucial logistical support to the Chindits, specialized British long-range penetration units operating approximately 200 miles deep within Japanese-held territory. This region was characterized by an utter absence of established roadways or navigable rivers suitable for boat transport, consisting solely of impenetrable jungle. The dedicated C-47 crews undertook perilous flights over the colossal Himalayas, traversing the southern fringe of the infamous air route known as the Hump. Here, they navigated treacherous 16,000-foot mountain passes where powerful updrafts and sudden downdrafts violently buffeted their aircraft, tossing them about like lightweight playthings. Their crucial cargo included vital ammunition, sustenance, essential medical provisions, and, remarkably, live mules. These pack animals were destined for the Chindits, intended for use in the rugged terrain. The act of coaxing and loading a terrified mule into the confined C-47 cargo bay presented a unique and particularly challenging ordeal, yet the resourceful crews consistently accomplished the task. Beyond supply delivery, they also performed critical casualty evacuations, sometimes fitting as many as 30 stretchers into the cabin by ingeniously stacking them 3 high along the interior walls. The aircraft's cabin, under these circumstances, was transformed into a rudimentary flying field hospital, where medics diligently attended to the wounded, often by the flickering beam of a flashlight, even as the plane lurched and pitched through violent monsoon storms. Among the most storied exploits in the Pacific Theater was the critical supply mission to Bataan in early 1942, preceding the eventual capitulation of the Philippines. C-47 aircraft, launching from Australian airfields, valiantly endeavored to penetrate formidable Japanese air patrols, aiming to deliver desperately needed food and ammunition to the beleaguered American and Filipino forces encircled on the peninsula. The vast majority of these daring attempts proved unsuccessful, with Japanese Zero fighters either shooting them down or compelling them to abort their missions and return. However, a courageous few managed to slip through under the cover of darkness, flying precariously at wave-top height to evade enemy radar detection, successfully dropping supplies that sustained the defenders' resistance for several additional weeks. This was recognized by all involved as a virtual suicide mission, yet the dedicated crews unflinchingly volunteered for the perilous undertaking. Subsequently, following General MacArthur's successful campaign to reclaim the Philippines, the C-47s transitioned into the indispensable backbone of the Allied island-hopping logistical strategy. These versatile transports would sequentially advance from one newly secured airstrip to the next, ferrying an astonishing array of provisions, ranging from essential freshwater supplies to psychological warfare propaganda leaflets. During the intense battle for Okinawa, C-47s routinely executed landings amidst active artillery barrages, their engines kept running, cargo doors flung open, as ground crews frantically hurled out supplies even while the aircraft was still in motion. The remarkable efficiency of these operations was underscored by an astonishing average turnaround time of merely 4 minutes. This extraordinary level of operational efficiency was not solely attributable to the inherent capabilities of the aircraft itself. Rather, it stemmed profoundly from the fundamental simplicity of its engineering, which empowered mechanics to resolve issues utilizing only basic tools and enabled cargo handlers to execute their duties with exceptional swiftness. The C-47 exhibited no requirement for highly specialized ground equipment or impeccably maintained operational environments. Its defining characteristic was its unfailing functionality, consistently performing its duties across diverse locations and under all conceivable circumstances. With the cessation of hostilities in August 1945, the global landscape was abruptly saturated with a vast surplus of C-47 aircraft. Thousands of these venerable transports were arrayed across airfields spanning from the United Kingdom to the Philippine archipelago, awaiting either their eventual dismantling for scrap or their disposal at significantly reduced prices. While the majority of military aircraft typically recede into historical anonymity once their respective conflicts conclude, the C-47, remarkably, embarked upon a subsequent chapter in its operational life, one that proved nearly as compelling and impactful as its initial wartime service. The unfolding events proved almost as dramatic as the initial conflict itself. In June 1948, the Soviet Union orchestrated a comprehensive blockade of West Berlin, effectively severing all road and rail connections. This calculated maneuver aimed to starve the city into submission and compel the Western Allies to withdraw. Approximately 2 million Berliners found themselves isolated within the western sectors, facing a grim reality with perhaps only 36 days' worth of food reserves. The metropolis required a staggering 4,500 tons of provisions daily merely to subsist, encompassing essential items such as coal for heating and electricity, flour for bread, vital medicines, and clothing. The notion of sustaining an entire city solely by air seemed an insurmountable challenge, an endeavor entirely unprecedented. Nevertheless, the Allied forces were left with no alternative but to repurpose their war surplus C-47 aircraft and commence airborne operations. Operation Victuals, as the Americans designated it, commenced on June 26, 1948, while their British counterparts referred to it as Operation Playfair. Initially, the undertaking was characterized by a disorganized frenzy, with C-47s haphazardly transporting whatever cargo they could acquire. These aircraft would touch down at Tempelhof Airport, situated in the very heart of Berlin, where their contents were manually unloaded before they promptly departed. Each plane possessed a modest carrying capacity of approximately 2.5 tons per journey, necessitating an astonishing nearly 2,000 flights per day to adequately supply the city's needs. This translated to an aircraft landing every 90 seconds, ceaselessly, regardless of meteorological conditions. The logistical complexities involved were truly astronomical. Over time, ground crews meticulously devised an exceptionally efficient system. The instant a C-47 made contact with the runway, it swiftly taxied to a designated unloading zone where German laborers would descend upon it in a flurry of activity. They were allotted a mere 8 minutes to disembark the diverse cargo: sacks of coal, bags of flour, crates of powdered milk, before the aircraft was compelled to take off and vacate the runway for the subsequent arrival. Should an aircraft suffer a malfunction, it was unceremoniously pushed off the runway with a bulldozer, with repairs deferred until a later, less critical moment. There was simply no margin for delay. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The C-47s navigated through 3 distinct aerial corridors extending from West Germany into Berlin. Each of these pathways spanned 20 miles in width and was stratified with multiple altitude layers. Aircraft maintained flight levels at 5,000, 6,000, and 7,000 feet, separated by precise time intervals calculated down to the very second. Air traffic controllers found themselves orchestrating a sophisticated 3-dimensional ballet, a feat of coordination that would undoubtedly induce apprehension in even the most seasoned modern logistics experts. The onset of winter dramatically exacerbated the already arduous situation. Berlin in December 1948 experienced frigid temperatures, and the city's power plants faced a critical depletion of coal reserves. Consequently, the C-47s began to almost exclusively transport coal, a grimy, ponderous, and abrasive substance that inflicted significant wear upon the cargo floors and permeated the cabin with fine black dust. Crews were forced to shovel coal out of the aircraft between flights due to the utter lack of time for proper cleaning. They were utterly exhausted, often completing 2 or 3 round trips daily, snatching sleep in intermittent shifts, and subsisting on cold rations. The aircraft themselves endured a relentless beating. The continuous flying regimen caused engines to wear out at a rate far exceeding typical peacetime operations. Maintenance crews toiled through 24-hour shifts, diligently replacing cylinders, patching hydraulic leaks, and swapping out propellers that had become bent from the incessant, hard landings. By the spring of 1949, the monumental airlift had transformed into a finely tuned operational machine. The Allied forces augmented their fleet with larger C-54 Skymasters, yet the C-47 steadfastly remained the primary workhorse, undertaking the majority of missions. A remarkable record was established on Easter Sunday, April 16, 1949, when the airlift delivered an astonishing 12,941 tons of supplies within a 24-hour period, amounting to nearly 1,400 individual flights. Recognizing the unwavering resolve of the Allies, Stalin ultimately lifted the blockade on May 12, 1949. The airlift, however, persevered until September, solely to build up Berlin's critical reserves. By its culmination, the C-47s had completed over 100,000 sorties, successfully delivering 2.3 million tons of vital provisions. Crucially, not a single Berliner succumbed to starvation. The C-47 unequivocally demonstrated its capacity to sustain life under seemingly impossible conditions in peacetime, mirroring its formidable performance during wartime. The very aircraft that had once ferried paratroopers into Normandy now dropped coal into a blockaded city, exhibiting the same rugged reliability. The profound influence of the C-47 extended far beyond American national boundaries, propagating across the globe with the pervasive reach of a powerful idea. Nations everywhere swiftly recognized the indispensable utility of this particular aircraft. The British military, for instance, acquired over 2,000 C-47s through the Lend-Lease program during the war and developed a deep affection for them. They affectionately dubbed it the Dakota, a nickname derived from its military designation, Douglas Aircraft Company Transport Aircraft, Dakota. This name endured, and to this day, British pilots refer to it as the Dakota with a palpable sense of reverence. The Royal Air Force deployed Dakotas across numerous theaters: North Africa, Italy, Burma, and subsequently in Malaya, where they were instrumental in combating communist insurgents in the dense jungle. The aircraft's unparalleled ability to airdrop supplies to remote outposts deep within the rainforest made counterinsurgency operations feasible. Without the Dakota, it is widely believed that the British might well have lost Malaya. Following the war, France obtained hundreds of Dakotas and promptly deployed them in Indochina, where they were tasked with supplying isolated garrisons engaged in combat with the Viet Minh. The most notable mission occurred at Dien Bien Phu in 1954, where French Dakotas valiantly airlifted essential supplies and paratroopers into a valley completely encircled by enemy forces. Although the base ultimately fell, the Dakotas continued to fly until the last possible moment, with their courageous crews fully aware that they faced imminent capture or demise. Then there is the intriguing Soviet narrative, which presents a particularly wild twist. As early as 1936, even before the outbreak of World War II, the Soviets procured a license to domestically manufacture DC-3s. They meticulously reverse-engineered the design, converted all imperial measurements to the metric system, and commenced production of a near-identical clone known as the Lisanovly II. The primary distinction was the addition of a dorsal gun turret, reflecting Soviet military doctrine which presumed that every transport aircraft would inevitably encounter enemy fighters. By the time Germany launched its invasion in 1941, Soviet factories were mass-producing Li-2s, with over 6,000 units constructed by the war's conclusion. The Li-2 performed a multifaceted array of roles, mirroring the capabilities of the C-47. It ferried supplies to partisans operating behind German lines, evacuated wounded personnel from Stalingrad, and even functioned as a night bomber, conducting airstrikes by dropping small bombs on German positions. After the cessation of hostilities, the Soviets disseminated Li-2s to virtually every communist nation globally. China received them, North Korea utilized them extensively during the Korean War, and Eastern European countries maintained them in service for many decades. A peculiar irony emerges from the fact that a Soviet-built clone of an American capitalist airliner became the fundamental cornerstone of communist military logistics. Yet this is precisely what transpired. Smaller nations gravitated towards the C-47 due to its affordability, straightforward design, and ready availability. In the aftermath of World War II, a surplus C-47 could be acquired for the modest investment equivalent to a luxury automobile, and its operation did not demand a team of highly specialized engineers. Indeed, a mechanic proficient in repairing a tractor possessed the requisite skills to maintain a C-47. Countries such as Greece, Turkey, Israel, and South Africa established their nascent air forces around this versatile type. Israel, for instance, employed C-47s during the 1948 War of Independence to airlift crucial supplies past Arab blockades, and even expediently modified a few into improvised bombers by rolling explosives out of the cargo door. This method was rudimentary, but proved remarkably functional. South Africa deployed C-47s in the border war, executing commando insertions into Angola and Mozambique. The Argentine Air Force utilized them during the Falklands War in 1982. Remarkably, nearly 50 years after its initial design debut, these aircraft were still actively engaged in combat missions. One Argentine C-47 was famously shot down by a British Sea Harrier, an encounter that likely represents the singular instance of a 1930s-era transport aircraft being destroyed by a jet fighter. By the 1990s, the operational history of C-47s or Dakotas encompassed over 60 nations at various points, cementing its status as one of the most ubiquitous aircraft in aviation history. A number of these venerable machines persist in service today, predominantly with small cargo operators in Africa and South America, transporting freight to remote locales where paved runways remain a luxury. Certain C-47s constructed in 1943 have logged an astonishing 90,000 flight hours, an endurance equivalent to flying non-stop for more than a decade. The airframe, it seems, simply refuses to yield. Upon entering any contemporary military transport aircraft, be it a C-130 Hercules, an A-400M Atlas, or even the colossal C-17 Globemaster, one can discern the indelible DNA of the C-47 everywhere. The rear cargo ramp that articulates downwards for loading is a direct evolutionary descendant of the C-47 side cargo door philosophy, prioritizing expeditious loading and unloading without the need for specialized ground equipment. The webbing seats lining the fuselage walls, where troops sit facing one another, are a direct inheritance from the tubular aluminum benches Douglas initially installed in 1942. The tie-down rings embedded in the floor, the static line cables for paratroopers, and the fundamental emphasis on operating from unconventional airstrips. Every modern military transport inherits these features because the C-47 unequivocally demonstrated their practical efficacy. The U.S. Air Force's entire doctrine of tactical airlift, which posits the ability to sustain ground forces deep within enemy territory purely through aerial supply, was formulated during World War II, with C-47 serving as the primary test platform. Prior to the C-47, the conventional wisdom held that waging war effectively was impossible without secure ground-based supply lines. The C-47's groundbreaking capabilities effectively rendered that long-held belief antiquated. The engineering lessons gleaned from the C-47 extended even deeper. Douglas proved that one did not require avant-garde technology to construct a war-winning weapon. Instead, the critical elements were reliability, simplicity, and ease of mass manufacturability. The C-47 incorporated readily available, off-the-shelf engines, conventional aluminum fabrication, and mechanical systems that were straightforward enough for even a high school shop class to comprehend. There were no exotic materials, no experimental designs, and no components that demanded months of lead time for production. This pragmatic design philosophy profoundly shaped post-war military thinking. When Lockheed embarked on designing the C-130 Hercules in the 1950s, they consciously emulated the C-47's approach, prioritizing ruggedness, simplicity, and maintainability in the field using basic tools. The C-130 thus emerged as the C-47's spiritual successor, and it continues in production over 70 years later for precisely the same reasons that ensured the C-47's enduring success. It simply works. The enduring operational lifespan of the C-47 aircraft can be attributed to a singular, compelling factor: its inherent, unwavering functionality. It simply works, performing its designated tasks with remarkable consistency and dependability, a quality that has cemented its place in aviation history. Indeed, even in the modern era, professional logistics officers continue to meticulously analyze the Berlin airlift, holding it aloft as the unequivocal benchmark, the gold standard, for any sustained aerial supply operation. The intricate methodologies for coordination, the stringent maintenance schedules, and the sophisticated traffic control procedures meticulously devised in 1948, primarily utilizing the C-47s, established an indelible blueprint. This foundational template has subsequently informed and guided every significant airlift mission undertaken since, spanning from the intense engagements in Vietnam to the complex operations in Iraq and the protracted efforts in Afghanistan. However, the profound legacy of the C-47 extends far beyond its utilitarian role as military hardware. More fundamentally, it irrevocably transformed the global perception and understanding of transportation itself, reshaping how nations and individuals conceptualize movement and connectivity. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment below about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Prior to the advent of the DC-3 and its subsequent military variant, air travel was largely perceived as an exotic, often perilous, and notoriously unreliable endeavor, accessible only to a privileged few. Yet, in the aftermath of World War II, a veritable deluge of thousands of surplus C-47s inundated the civilian market. These robust aircraft swiftly transitioned into becoming the indispensable workhorses of burgeoning commercial aviation sectors, particularly within developing nations across the globe. These resilient planes were instrumental in pioneering and establishing crucial air routes spanning the vast continents of Africa, South America, and Asia, thereby forging vital links between remote regions that had previously been isolated by the complete absence of any viable roads or railways. The C-47 conclusively demonstrated that aviation possessed the potential to be rugged, remarkably affordable, and supremely dependable, transcending its former image as merely a luxurious plaything for the affluent. This profound psychological transformation held immense significance. It persuasively convinced governments and private enterprises alike to commit substantial investments in the nascent aviation infrastructure, a pivotal move that ultimately paved the way for the revolutionary jet age and the sophisticated global connectivity we experience today. In a very tangible and profound sense, the C-47 stands as the venerable grandfather of contemporary titans like the Boeing 737 and the Airbus A320, which seamlessly knit the world together across vast distances. There is an undeniable poetic resonance in the journey of an aircraft initially conceived and designed to ferry sleeping passengers in opulent luxury, only to evolve into the very machine instrumental in winning a global conflict and subsequently rebuilding the foundations of peace. The visionary engineers at Douglas in 1935 could scarcely have comprehended that their elegant sleeper transport would one day deploy paratroopers into the heart of France, sustain defiant guerrillas in the dense jungles of Burma, deliver life-sustaining provisions to a beleaguered, blockaded city, and remarkably, still be actively flying 90 years later. Their singular objective was simply to construct the finest aircraft possible with the technological capabilities then at their disposal. And, as history has repeatedly affirmed, the principle of good enough done right consistently triumphs over the allure of the cutting edge in nearly every instance. The C-47 did not emerge victorious in the war by virtue of being the swiftest or the most technologically advanced aircraft of its time. Its triumph stemmed from its unwavering ability to arrive, execute its assigned duties, absorb considerable damage, and unfailingly return for subsequent missions. This pattern repeated itself day after day, mission after mission, year after year. That, in essence, constitutes its enduring legacy, not merely as an airplane, but as an overarching philosophy of engineering that places paramount value on reliability over sheer brilliance, simplicity over needless complexity, and proven capability over untested, speculative innovation. Ultimately, the C-47 Skytrain imparted a crucial lesson to the entire world, that sometimes, the most effective tool available is quite simply the one that steadfastly refuses to succumb to failure. This profound and timeless lesson continues to resonate powerfully, echoing through the design and operational principles of every cargo plane traversing the skies today.